Hey, I want you to picture this for me. Today is the 9th, right? The year just started. This week just started. And what if I told you within the course of the last 36 hours, we've dealt with severe weather, multitude of tornado reports, and also a blizzard? And you know what the crazy thing is? It's only Tuesday, and we're not done. Hey everybody, Tyler Metalhead Weatherman here. Hopefully everyone's doing well and has gotten through the week okay, because it's been busy. It's been crazy. So, between the people that have dealt with severe weather, high winds and tornadoes, and also some large hail at times, surprisingly, and blizzard conditions, again, like I said, blizzard conditions in Texas, even, in Oklahoma, I'm hoping everybody got through everything all right. But that being said, I'm, I know I normally ask y'all to hit the like button, and I'm still going to, and hit the subscribe button, all that other stuff. But you don't want to know something crazy? It's only Tuesday. Week just started. We dealt with all this, and we got this right here. We have a day 3 slight risk for Thursday, and a day 4 slight risk on Friday. Both of those had just popped up yesterday, because there's another storm system behind this one. I remember talking about how there was going to be quite a change to the weather pattern here, and it was going to be increasingly more active. Well, we're here. That's all I can really say. So, like I said, hit that like button, buckle your seatbelts. If you're new, consider subscribing around here. And also hit that share button, because if you thought we were done with this storm system, I'm afraid I got some bad news for you. That being said, let's get into what we're looking at here to the screen to the right, and that's going to be the wintry side of things, where out west we're seeing high potential for more snowfall. This is basically looking at probability of snow accumulating over an inch. Pretty much child's play for storm systems here out west, but the fact that we see the probabilities as high as they are lasting for this long tells you that there's a lot of snow coming, because it's going to be like that the whole day. And then what ends up happening as we go through Thursday and into Friday, this is only going to continue to push its way out to the east here. So these areas in Nebraska and Kansas that already dealt with a blizzard not long ago are likely to see more action, actually. And then over here on Friday, we'll start to see the Midwest, areas that we were just watching today, because we're literally not far removed from the live stream we've done, the 2 live streams we've done today over the last, let's say, close to 10 hours out of the day. So, I mean, that's just symbolic to how busy it is. I rarely do 2 live streams in a day unless either A, I'm just not feeling good, or something crashes, which it did in this case. But the fact of the matter is, we're going to be busy. We're going to be really busy. And that's really the point I'm trying to make here. So, as far as today's severe reports, 15 tornado reports, or confirmed tornado reports as of right now. 225 wind reports, 4 of which were significant. And then there's no hail reports today. All of those were yesterday. We'll go ahead and actually look at that while we're at it. And this is the archives for yesterday. Tornado reports were kind of lacking a little bit yesterday, but the hail reports were surprisingly high. You don't normally think of hail when it comes to January, but to have 23 hail reports and have 8 hail reports, one of which, when I was streaming yesterday, I saw a report of 3-inch hail in Texas. You don't think of hail larger than, I would say, maybe quarter size in January at all, let alone hail bigger than softballs. It's crazy. But like I said, we aren't done yet, because here we are on Thursday with another slight risk in an area not too dissimilar from what we were just looking at yesterday. And then it gets even more interesting as we go to day 4, because day 4 now we're including a much larger chunk of the southeast We're further up inland. We're further to the north. Now we're getting Raleigh into the action. We're getting Charlotte further into the action. We're even getting Atlanta, Birmingham, Columbus, Dothan, Jackson, Mississippi, maybe even Greenville into the action here. And keep in mind, this is a day 4. It's a very big area for a slight risk, especially a day 4 slight risk. So as we go through the models today, I'm going to be definitely on the lookout for seeing an increased area of interest, or concern, if you will, because my concern is that we will likely see an upgrade at least for Friday, possibly. Now, if this stays at a slight risk, that's great news. But usually, when you see something wide like this, there's always an extra area you have to look for. It's almost kind of like looking for an Easter egg in a way. If there's anyone that plays Call of Duty Zombies, you can kind of relate. Anyway, that being said, let's go ahead and actually look at the model data here. Of course, since we're still pretty far out, we're mainly going to be drawing on the Euro and the GFS. We're going to be making a video tomorrow on this as well, so we're of course going to be trying to look at the convective models as well. But for right now, we're just kind of working with what we got. So if we look at the upper level pattern, if you've been around the channel, you know how we usually do things. The Euro model is the screen to the left, GFS is to the right. If we actually look at what we're seeing right now, this is the cyclone. This is the upper level cyclone that caused all the weather that I just talked about at the beginning of the video. So what will happen is, as we move this forward here, we'll see this finally begin to move out. So the severe weather threat will be over. Still will probably be a little bit of snow flurries flying around, maybe a chance of some lake effect snow going, but for the most part, we're not going to be worrying about too much for tomorrow. Tomorrow is going to be one of the quieter days. This, of course, unfortunately, as we all know now, is not going to last. And the first sign of trouble that I see here already is, of course, we see this this trough coming in here, and eventually a low is going to form around that. But I'm also watching this ridging that's going to be forming out ahead of it. So that means there's going to be warm air coming back into the equation out ahead of this. And if you have collision of warm and cold air masses, simply put, that's pretty much thunderstorms, almost guaranteed. So we have that slight risk in place for Thursday. So just some basic weather here for you. And right along this region here kind of interests me a little bit based off what we're seeing here. We see air. It looks like we see a little bit of air trying to rush away and then also close back in around it. So we have our convergence divergence setup maybe going on here. I don't have as much confidence in what's going on here a little further to the north, but there are some areas of interest that I do have. Now, as we go through the day into Friday, we see a much more prevalent sign of that over here towards the southeast. I'm thinking a little further to the south is where our greatest threat will be, but nonetheless, though, throughout the day Friday, we're going to have to be monitoring the southeast very closely. Dixie Alley, if you will. You know what I'm talking. If you live around the southeast, you know what Dixie Alley is. We've seen the story play out plenty of times before. And then on top of that, this is nothing new for us because this is what tends to happen sometimes during early to late winter. Sometimes we can get these kinds of severe setups. So we continue to go forward. We see another trough rolling in, another big storm system after that point, because we may as well look down the line and try to be prepared for everything. We can see multiple troughs from this point, and I'm not going to read as much into these as I do what's in the near term, which is really the next couple of days here. But since, of course, like I said, we're only really in range of like most of the convective model, of none of the convective models. We can't really get too far in depth here. This would make an hour-long video, which I'm sure no one wants. But that being said, here's our comparison right here. These are two of my favorite models to look at here. That was the Euro we just looked at. It's the GFS. Seeing a pretty much identical look starting out, just typical. But as we continue to go forward here, and this is really going slow right now too, you can see pretty much a similar deal here. And keep in mind, this GFS model is a lot fresher than this Euro model. This 18Z just come in. The Euro hasn't quite loaded yet. And then on top of that, we don't have the same kind of range on the next model run. It's only every 12 hours that this particular run with this amount of hours loads in. So I'm just kind of working with what we have. But anyways, if we look across the board here, so we get from Thursday into Friday, pretty much a similar look as far as the setup for Thursday. See a little bit more evidence of convergence, divergence on Friday. But what I'm making note of is one change that I do see is that there is a little bit more of a northerly track with this trough here. And I think we'll probably see a lower pressure area a little bit more towards the mid levels of the atmosphere. It could be a mid-level cyclone, but we'll have to see how this evolves. That's going to be the key question to everything here. But either way, with this trough and what looks to be a little bit of a negative tilt orientation, it could be a repeat, maybe, but albeit a different version of what we saw with this system that we're still dealing with now. So as we continue to drag this forward, and we're trying to get this to work here. Give me a minute. All right, so got this to start running a little bit better here. Sorry about that, guys. But across the board here, and there it goes again. We'll work through it. But you see pretty much a similar deal was what we were seeing with the Euro starting out, or getting in towards like the middle part of the run, where we see multiple troughs coming in. I do think that down the line we're going to see more cold air coming into play, but we also have to be watchful of any ridging. And I see a bigger ridge beginning to develop towards the back half of this month too. So that's going to be something else to keep an eye on. And then as we continue to roll forward from this point, getting into that 10-day range like we were seeing earlier, we do begin to see evidence of a pattern flip as we get towards the latter half of the month. I do think there has been talk about some stratospheric heating coming into play, but as a result here, it does seem like towards the end of the month here, we do begin to see that change that might be resulting of that. It's kind of hard to tell at this point, especially with the model here not necessarily cooperating all that well with me. But we'll go ahead and take a look at the lower levels here and try to work from there. So we'll try and do a little something like this. See if we can't get this to go a little bit quicker now this time around. So here's that first storm system. Here's the second one. And it does look a tiny bit more pronounced, but we haven't seen that low start to show itself yet. Down the line, we start to see a couple of positive tilted troughs come in. So that could be a sign of things to come here as far as changes are concerned. But one thing, again, that I'm making note of is this ridging that we're going to start to see taking place here towards the end of this run. We'll have to see if that ends up verifying, because 10 days is a long time to look out for. And more often than not, these can change within the course of one model run, which is usually 6 hours. So if we were to go ahead and take a look at GFS, make our comparison, and I have no idea why GFS has been a little slower than Euro lately, but we're seeing a lot of congruency between the two models starting out. This is where we start to see the change here. That trough becomes very broad here as well. So like I said, I have my thoughts on that. I have my questions with that. So maybe we could be looking at a potentially more northward ascent with a severe threat. I don't know how far north yet. And then also this could factor in a little bit more wintry precipitation further to the south. Like I said, I have a lot of uncertainties and a lot of questions with this setup that's upcoming as well. 4 days is 3 or 4 days is still a pretty long time to look out for as well. And then of course, here's where we start to see more of that cold air from the north funneling in here. Then from that point onward, it does look like we do see a change at the mid levels as well. So like I said, congruency is really the key between the model runs, especially at different levels of the atmosphere. Now, one thing I am making note of here for sure is the way that these air masses look. Really strong, really deep cold air masses here. So this is the first one, so be ready, because if you're further up north, you're going to feel this cold. You're really going to feel the cold air soon. And then we're going to see these really, really strong cold air masses come into play here as we get towards the end of the week. So really the question is going to be how these evolve out ahead. How does the atmosphere evolve out ahead of it? We get decent amount of warm air in place here. I do have my concerns about severe weather for sure. And I do think with the way this is set up, it would be an early afternoon event, if anything. So like I said, it's really going to boil down to some last minute changes here for sure from the looks of it. And then just look how strong these cold air masses are. When you see the pressure numbers getting closer to like the bottom end of 500, like 510, 504, even the 400s, that just shows a really, really impressive cold air mass. And usually a strong area of disturbed weather will follow with that. So as we continue to go forward, we continue to see those really cold air masses. And even then, it just doesn't look like the warm air is quite as impressive as we once saw it. Partially, this could be due to a color theme change on pivotal weather here, but I'm not entirely sure. Nothing was really released on that, so I'll look at that later. If I find anything, I'll come back on this video and confirm it to you. But across the board here, air masses are going to be pretty crazy here as far as the cold air is concerned. I have like I said, I really have my concerns with this system, especially with regardless of which outcome plays out, whether it's GFS, Euro, or if both of these models start to change up. But fact in the matter is, I'm gonna be pretty busy watching these models really closely. One thing I am making note of is that the GFS air masses are a lot stronger than the Euro ones right now. Look at that. That ends up dipping below 500 here. We're at 498 and probably even seeing a pressure gradient that might even be lower than that. And it's those pressure gradients that you always have to look out for, because you'll usually see these contour lines, which are these black lines right here. Whenever something's really strong, you'll see these tighten up substantially. So you're going to kind of see that become more prevalent on this temperature map here in particular. So we'll start out with Euro, of course, and we'll go on from that point. But obviously, you know what the cold air is at this point. You know what the warm air is. You don't even need the numbers to see it. But you can see how that cold air is just winning out. And you're starting to see those below zero temperatures. Even seeing the below 20s and below 30, or 20, 30 below here across the mountain starting to take shape. It's the first time during the season that we've seen that. So undoubtedly, the coldest air of the season is going to be coming in this weekend so far. Now, is there a chance that we'll see more of that down the line? Kind of hard to tell, but right now, get ready. That's all I'm going to say. You got some firewood? Definitely would recommend that you get that prepped up and set to go here. I already got my own, even though I live in the southeast. Still, about 34 degrees gets pretty chilly. But don't be surprised if we see some 20s and maybe even a day where we get into the teens. And in fact, there it is. We go into the following week to start out with. I think I saw 19 over towards Atlanta, still 13 over towards Birmingham, and 8 towards northern Mississippi. So like I said, undoubtedly, coldest air of the season is coming in. And it's going to hang around for a good portion of the week here. So some stratospheric heating. Dare I say polar vortex is coming into play, folks. So gonna be a couple of days during that week that are going to be really brutal here. So like I said, make sure you have yourself ready for it. Don't get caught off guard by it, because it's a great way to get sick and begin to feel really miserable. So now we're going to start to change things up and kind of shift our tone more towards the next couple of days here with severe weather threats. Mainly what we're looking for at this point is a moisture nodes, moisture returns, as they're also called. And you can see the moisture nodes from earlier today that came through on the euro. And this is what's been sustaining the severe weather threat across the southeast. So as we go through the day tomorrow, of course, we lose that moisture as that system's exiting. And then after that point, here is that next return coming in. And here is where our next severe threat will result because of that. And then watch what happens as we go through the day Friday. Look at how that moisture nose is advancing further to the east. And if you look, you can actually see the front begin to develop here with time. Now, depending on how the forcing is going to be a key factor. That's going to be our lift component with severe weather. Severe weather is comprised of 4 components: shear, lift, instability, and also moisture. So the moisture is in place. With the trough that we saw earlier, looking at the wind pattern, the shear is going to be there. Question is going to be instability. So this right here is our lift. So if you look at the word slim, this is M. When we look back at this map earlier, that's the S. So lift is also going to be shown on here a little bit as well, right here, through these contour lines. So there is some lift there. So all we're missing now is the I. So that's already 3 of the 4 basic parameters set up in place already. Then after this point, with that cold air kind of setting it, kind of locking itself in place, I think the severe weather threat will finally start to go down, but maybe we might see a little bit of an increase in wintry activity as well. Make that comparison to the GFS. Start out with a very similar look to begin with, and then as we continue to drag forward, look at what we end up seeing. Same moisture return, a little bit further to the south to start out with, but this ends up advancing maybe a little further to the north here on Friday. So like I said, I still have my questions about this, but it looks like general consensus is definitely showing that parameters are in place across the southeast for severe weather across the board here. And then after that point, you just don't really see any more severe weather. With that cold air winning out, those dew points will usually tend to dry out with colder air. So seeing negative dew points here, that's just kind of giving you an idea of just how cold the air actually is. And it's pretty much going to be a prevalent thing throughout the rest of this run, really. There might be a chance towards the Gulf Coast where you could see a shot at severe weather if a low pressure area comes through. But it's really not going to be to the end of the run where we start to see a little bit of a moisture return back towards the southeast. Now, if this moisture builds for a while and this scenario plays out this far out, I'm going to be keeping my eyes open for sure. So now let's actually look at instabilities. We're going to look at different levels of the atmosphere here. The mixed layer cape looks at all levels of the atmosphere, and that's what the Euro has, and then the GFS on here actually has surface cape. We're going to look at both of them over time, but we're specifically going to be looking at the surface with GFS. Now, I want you to keep one thing in mind. These are not perfect figures. These are not going to be exact figures regardless of what model I use. But the fact of the matter is, if we see some kind of signal here, and that's usually what we end up looking for when we're looking further out in advance, is for a signal. And here is example of said signal here. One thing to remember is during the winter time, we usually do not have excessive amounts of instability like we would during the summer, where we're seeing, let's say, 3,000 plus joules per kilogram. Usually you're going to be right at 1,000, sometimes even below it. And that's kind of what we're seeing here. So this is our first signal here. We actually see an increase as we go into the overnight hours on Thursday into Friday. And watch what happens as we go further out to the east here. We see much more rich instability further to the south here. Do I think this could be underplayed here? Usually with the global models, which is what we're looking at with these two, yes. Is this a guarantee? Is it a guarantee that we'll see instability further up to the north or Cape? Still kind of out on jury with that one. The jury is still out on that one. I really cannot speak worth anything today. All that streaming will do that to you. So we look towards the next model run, of course, we know that severe weather is going to be on the downtrend finally. We go to surface base Cape. Here's our first look, and then here's the look on Thursday night. You see some values here around 500. Could they be higher? Like I said, a decent chance of it. GFS doesn't do terrible with Cape, but a thing to make note of here, we do see a little bit more of a nose here further up north than we do with the Euro here. So it really is going to come down to when we look at convective models as far as some of these instability values are concerned. But does it look like there's instability in place here? I'd say yes. So you have the 4 basic factors here. So the trigger mechanism, the lift, is really going to be the key component in this one. If that parameter doesn't really pan out to be much of anything, then I wouldn't expect too much in the way of severe weather this weekend. But given the way that trough looks, I think there's still a pretty good shot of it right now. And so does the Storm Prediction Center, so we'll go with that. So now we'll go ahead and look at our precip type. We normally will look at the flash rate density here, kind of get a look at where our storms could be. But I mean, we kind of already seen all the evidence that we need, so we'll just kind of forego that today. Also in light of trying to make this video just a little bit shorter for you. But this is looking at the precipitation type. We're starting to see that snow start to diminish by tomorrow morning and into the afternoon. That's going to be out of here. And then here comes our next system sneaking into the picture, becoming more prevalent as we go later into the week. And then here's our setup for Thursday night into Friday. And one thing that I've found kind of alarming with the Euro here is these little clusters of storms here. Could we have the same kind of convection, or as sometimes it's called crapvection, coming into play once again here across the south? Yes. Dew points are in play to such a point to where if the forcing is subtle enough, we can get storms forming all over the place. Not all of those will be severe, and sometimes these storms will form on top of each other, and with that they don't really develop that well and go to severe criteria. It's kind of what we had happen here, because the ceiling for the early part of this week's setup was much higher than what actually ended up happening. So I'm going to be cautious with this one as well, because I think that there could be a similar scenario in play, especially considering that the forcing doesn't look unbelievable with this. What does look crazy is the fact that when we get towards Michigan here, we do see that increased chance of heavy snow here, maybe even a wintry mix as well. And then also it looks like we do get some decent contour lines starting to tighten up here, so we could be looking at also maybe blizzard like conditions. Will the duration be long enough to make it a blizzard? Still to be determined at that point. But fact in the matter is, across the board here with the Euro, it definitely looks like we have another very dynamic storm on our hands here. And then here's the next one to follow that one. It's kind of got a crazy look to it, but if this scenario plays out, we could see another opportunity for southern snow starting next week. But like I said, it's 168 hours out. It's a whole week out. A lot of room for changes. And then as we go from that point and beyond here, things do look like they start to eventually quiet down here. So there's an end in sight for all the madness that we've been seeing so far. But we just got to mainly get through this week and some of next week. So here's a look at the GFS. Pretty much a similar deal starting out. Here's that next system. Really starts to get its act together a little bit later based on the progression. And then also, like I said, and this doesn't surprise me to see that we're favoring a little bit more of a northerly type severe weather setup, and also a little bit further off to the east with the wintry precipitation. Then here comes our next system. And this is bringing cold air a little further to the south here, so could see increased wintry activity, maybe even some ice over here towards Mississippi, Alabama, maybe even Georgia. I do think eventually that moisture is going to run out, because there's not really a low pressure system to help sustain that moisture or keep it going by the time we get to that point in time. But of course, as we know, things can change very easily, so we'll just have to keep an eye out. If we go beyond that point, definitely looks like things start to calm down. We do occasionally get these little clipper systems that could bring in a little burst of snow here and there, but beyond that point, nothing major to really go on about further into the GFS right now. We haven't seen too much in the way of organized storm systems until much later into the runs. But that being said here, just a general idea of what we could see. Keep in mind, like I said, a lot of this stuff is prone to changing, so my confidence isn't extremely high once we get past this weekend. Of course, confidence towards this weekend setup is a little bit higher, not by much though. Really, I'm not gonna feel better about that until I get a look at the convective models, which we will tomorrow. That being said, hope you guys had a good day. Enjoyed hanging out with some of you guys on the stream, and then of course we'll probably be doing this again later this week within the next couple of days. So hope you guys enjoy. Some pretty cool stuff ahead on the channel here, so I hope you're looking forward to that as well. That being said, it's been Metalhead Weatherman. If you made it to the end, you're a real one, and I'll see you next time.